You guys probably didn't expect me to make a video involving around wrestling or WWE in general, but for what happened last night and the fact that the rest of the night ended up being successful despite of this change, I really need to get this out of the way. Not to mention I'm going to be emotional in this video, which is something I don't usually do in most of my videos. So, for Survivor Series this year, we got another brand supremacy pay-per-view that WWE had promoted Survivor Series since 2016, and I'm going to be really curious on what I have to discuss right now. This, in my opinion, has to be the worst brand supremacy pay-per-view, all because of one match. I mean, for the last 3 years, I can totally understand the issues that WWE did in Survivor Series, and I took time to understand, but for this match that I'm showing right now, is where they officially crossed the line over this whole brand split between Raw and SmackDown. First, let me make one thing perfectly clear on the fact that this show, despite having a few good matches, I didn't even bother watching the main event, all because of the women's elimination match between Raw and SmackDown. And it's the fact that they're completely enforcing Raw to beat SmackDown nearly every single time for no justification. Here, look. Here's one of the reasons on to why one match completely damaged the whole show, and the fact that despite no scoreboard being shown in the show, there is still no excuse. The women's match features Team Smackdown, Bianca Belair's team, against the women's tag team champions, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, and Shayna Baszler tried to eliminate most of the competition since that she's the final member of the SmackDown to be eliminated. And I have to say, I was really on the edge of my seat to actually think that SmackDown might be able to carry a point in order to make an even score in order to determine the final match on who can regain brand supremacy. But unfortunately, it didn't end up happening. After Shayna Baszler got disqualified, Nia was about to put Shayna Baszler through an announce table, just like she kept doing the same thing to Lana so many times on Raw. And Shayna Baszler tries to take Nia Jax in order for a counter, but unfortunately, it was way too late as the referee made the count, which causes Bianca Belair and Nia Jax to be counted out. But unfortunately, the only member who was in the lane for the majority of this match, despite with a few moves, was Lana. And Lana was on Team Raw, and Raw won the victory. This right here was the reason as to why I didn't bother watching the main event, nor completely watching the farewell of The Undertaker. You could say all you want that this isn't mainly about brand supremacy, but if WWE really didn't care about the build-up or anything, then there's really no point into making this show a brand supremacy pay-per-view at all. For so many reasons on people expecting Survivor Series to be what it used to be before 2016 or the good old days, then I honestly think that this whole pay-per-view exists for the sake of a filler pay-per-view, which is something that Survivor Series shouldn't be. Look, the other matches in this show really triggers me on the fact that they instantly make Raw a far superior show, despite the fact that they keep doing that over the last 4 years during Survivor Series. In the first Survivor Series, which was in 2016, they did a disqualification in the Cruiserweight match, making Raw becoming victorious, even with the elimination match of the men's of that night. the 2017, they completely did the Triple H and Braun Strowman angle, which led to nowhere afterwards. The clean sweep that they did in 2018, and now NXT from last year. But in this year, they really crossed the line, in my opinion. Look, I get that there was nothing on the line, but when you completely have the tagline of best of the best, and you're treating SmackDown terribly when it comes to them not be able to eliminate any of the men's roster from the Raw team in any capacity, and just having Raw having a clean sweep at not getting eliminated, and the fact that you didn't even bother to have a better team for SmackDown by having Big E be on the team, that really goes to show that WWE is literally just doing this for the sake of making Raw better than SmackDown. Look, I get that Survivor Series isn't the show that you have to prove yourself in order to be better than everyone else, because it's really not the point. But if that's really the case, then there's really no point into having this a brand supremacy pay-per-view at this point, on the fact that they're just going to have Raw win yet again, and just making the next match honestly worthless, despite the fact being really good. Which, after everything I witnessed, I'm starting to convince that WWE is just doing this for the sake of just causing drama and stress when it comes to teams of Raw and SmackDown. Because before the show, AJ Styles and his members of the Raw team are having a dysfunctional and self-destruction, and then on the show, it never ended up happening, since that they never got eliminated. The Bobby Lashley vs. Sami Zayn match, I heard that it's going to be a squash match by rumors, but it was actually 7 minutes, and just by looking at the match itself, I honestly thought that Retribution was going to intervene, but it didn't end up happening, so we just see Bobby Lashley just forcing Sami to submit. And literally the only matches that I actually enjoyed was Sasha Banks versus Asuka and the Street Profits versus the New Day. Not because SmackDown won, but the fact that they were actually giving SmackDown a chance to actually catch up for the final 2 matches of this show. But unfortunately, it didn't end up happening. Now, here's what really triggers me about the women's match. They keep hammering on storylines when it comes to wrestlers on Raw and wrestlers on SmackDown. And at this point, it's starting to become really annoying whether they keep doing these in Survivor Series. Granted, it was a thing that they did in the past, but unlike in the past, they really cross the line when it comes to a counter victory that literally had that I had no idea that they're going to be doing in the first place. Because when you completely make a count victory over an any two women's match that's mainly about Raw versus SmackDown, and the fact that Bianca Belair might have the advantage to give SmackDown a win, and the fact that SmackDown's women's team never won at Survivor Series yet, that really goes to show that they honestly don't know how to book SmackDown correctly when it comes to Survivor Series. If you don't even believe me, then how is the excuse of having SmackDown not having better wrestlers on the SmackDown team and just forcing Seth Rollins just to have a instant loss, all because he lost in a rivalry against Buddy Murphy in the previous SmackDown episode? That really goes to show that storytelling is starting to become really annoying, and the whole brand supremacy thing is starting to become fading away over the fact that the coronavirus is just getting worse, so that's why there's not many people from Raw and SmackDown appearing, and the fact that I am really getting fed up with this whole storyline between Lana and Nia Jax, because at this point, Lana isn't really a good wrestler compared to the other wrestlers on the Raw roster. And just seeing her get an instant win for doing absolutely nothing despite doing a few moves in the match is honestly one of the worst endings, and really makes this whole brand supremacy thing an entire joke. Look, the entire Rusev to AEW and WWE just punching Lana may be justifiable, but at this point, WWE just honestly doesn't even fully aware on the decision making after all these years. And this decision honestly triggers me to the point that I just think that there's probably no respect for the Smackdown wrestlers when it comes to on the fact that they keep losing so many times, and the fact that this is the 4th time that Raw has beat SmackDown at Survivor Series. In last year's Survivor Series, I automatically knew that NXT was going to win. And then 2018, I actually expect that SmackDown can actually win at the main show. I didn't complain in those shows because they were instantly predictable for how I got the information when it comes to NXT joining and the clean sweep from Raw. But here, this is honestly pushing it to the point that WWE is just completely enforcing the good parts and just forcing you to ignore the bad parts. Like, you're supposed to expect this match to be a fair victory despite the fact that it's just way too cheap to end off by having Lana win at the end, and then just expect the next match in Undertaker's farewell to be decent and just ignore this match in general. Tell me. Just give me an explanation on the fact that the ending of this match is considered good. You can't say that it's fair, because even if it is, it's still not excusable, because people have been complaining about the victories in WWE in the past when it comes to decision making, mainly having Shane McMahon being the final member of the Survivor Series team in 2018, and the fact that most of the finishes that we've seen in the other pay-per-views from the show were easily questionable. And to be quite honest, I never had an issue with those endings, because even if I understand it, I honestly have no grudge whatsoever. I mean, Brock Lesnar winning the Universal Championship at Crown Jewel 2018, as much as I really want the Universal Championship to have some kind of an exposure on television and pay-per-view, I honestly think that having Brock Lesnar win is honestly for the sake of just having him wrestle Daniel Bryan at the next pay-per-view. And the Hell in a Cell match between Seth Rollins and Bray Wyatt, as much as I can understand people despising that match on the fact that they didn't put the title on The Fiend, I didn't have an issue with it because I wasn't that much of a fan of The Fiend. I was more a fan of Seth Rollins. And even though that the match was overbooked but also overhate, I still had no issue with it. So I honestly do understand the booking when it comes to WWE matches, despite the fact that they go too far with it. I'm completely aware of the decisions that they did in the past when it comes to having part-timers main event constantly, having decisions that completely cross the line, and the fact that they just make stupid decisions that just instantly triggers people. But in this match alone, even if there's no scoreboard, there is literally no point into having Raw be victorious in the women's match. In fact, it just makes me understand that the Raw brand is just way too good, despite the fact that some of the decisions that they make are considered bad. And when people say that SmackDown is good when it comes to most of the stories and promos, then you should easily expect that they should get a win at Survivor Series, because this is the second brand split, and this is not like the first brand split that WWE did since buying WCW and ECW, because in the first brand split, the only thing we have involving Raw vs. SmackDown is, other than the bracket rights pay-per-view from 2009 and 2010, we had a draft thing that we kept having that involves Raw and SmackDown superstars facing each other in order to get a draft pack. Back then, I was really excited to see one of my favorite wrestlers being transferred to SmackDown, and mostly upset of having the SmackDown wrestlers being drafted to Raw. However, it wasn't all about bracket rights. It was just mainly about getting a better superstar for the team. But here, this isn't about draft or anything. This is about... Wait, I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry, no, I'm not. My point is that this isn't about getting a better person in the draft. This is about brand supremacy. And if you're gonna have The Undertaker have a farewell at the end of the show, then at this point you should actually put some attention into the other matches, because as far as I'm concerned, none of these matches, including the main event, really made me satisfied over for what I witnessed in the women's elimination match. Because as much as I do not despise Lana, I honestly think that having a stupid victory over a countout is honestly a cheap and honestly trollish move from WWE. It's not even funny or clever. It's actually really childish, and act childish when you completely see on the fact that Lana just instantly gets a victory by countout. Compared to her qualifying match on the fact that he just pulls a woman out of the lane in order to pin the other woman in order to be qualified in this match, that really goes to show that Lana really has no point to being in the WWE whatsoever. Because for what I see in her performance as a wrestler, she really didn't do much when it comes to for her in-ring capabilities. Because when WWE just completely have wrestlers like Sami Zayn and Lana not being as good wrestlers, despite the fact that they had some kind of qualities into them, and not doing those qualities for the full attention, mainly on the wrestlers, then I honestly cannot take this whole victory seriously on having as a failed victory, because it really crosses the line. It made Bianca Belair bad when it comes to the count victory. It made SmackDown a really terrible sore loser. I know sore losers is something that people just need to accept since that they won a victory, but this is really pushing it. Because I was actually expecting SmackDown to win, since that NXT is not part of this. And after the show, I highly doubt that there's ever going to be another brand supremacy pay-per-view next year for what we've witnessed from this match. Seriously, you have no idea how furious I was, and immediately stopped watching the show over this match. And I'm really getting sick of people not taking this brand supremacy thing seriously. If WWE actually does care about this whole brand supremacy pay-per-view in general, because if they were just going to keep doing stuff like this, then they just better off making this Survivor Series show just like every other Survivor Series show that they kept doing before 2016. I am really getting fed up on the fact that people are just making this whole show for fun, despite the fact that this is in the second brand split, and even if this is the 5th time, I really think that having Raw win every single time is starting to become a really huge cop-out, and people are just shrugging it off for the sake of this show being just a brand supremacy pay-per-view, and it's really, really irritating me. Look, I get that I was overreacting and the fact that I didn't give the next match a chance because it was a great match. But even without a scoreboard, they're still treating this as a brand supremacy pay-per-view. And as far as I'm concerned, if the whole point into not having a scoreboard is to not make SmackDown a torso loser, that was way too late for that, on the fact that they kept losing so many times in the previous years, and I'm sick of WWE just erasing those memories. This match alone has to be one of the most disappointing matches I have ever seen, from not only from this year, but from any other WWE match I've seen, because it didn't improve Bianca Belair, and the victory that Lana had at the end is just giving the middle finger towards the Smackdown team. Because, as far as I'm concerned, I'm convinced that Smackdown is the C show, while NXT and Raw are considered the A and B show, for the fact that they're treating SmackDown as the second brand. And if people are going to discuss on Raw being the flagship show, they kept doing that so many times over these years, and it's getting old. They're really making SmackDown nothing important when it comes to this pay-per-view in general, and when you completely not have SmackDown be able to have a victory over Raw because of these decisions, that is where I officially starting to lose my insanity whether I completely think about these decisions. I do have issues when it comes to these decisions makings, but not the other decisions makings, because I know full well that WWE isn't real. But when you completely make booking decisions like these, and when I take these booking decisions this seriously, then that is where I actually take WWE seriously as a non-realistic wrestling show. Because I have predictions constantly on the fact that SmackDown may have a chance against Raw, but unfortunately, it never ended up happening. And then, when people completely shrug it off, even if I can understand their opinions, that really goes to show that this entire pay-per-view doesn't need to be brand supremacy if you don't care on the amount of wins that Raw has won. Scoreboard or not, they are instantly punching beating SmackDown to the ground constantly, and it's getting overshadowed by storylines, matches, and it's starting to become really, really, really miserable. Seriously, it is becoming miserable. Survivor Series is getting improvements over the years, and when people are overlooking at this kind of stuff, then I honestly think that they honestly have no care if SmackDown actually gets into last place, if there is actually a Survivor Series brand supremacy match when it comes to Raw, NXT, and NXT UK join in order to make this a four-branded battle. And believe me, I think that if that actually happens, that really goes to show that people just don't even have an understanding on SmackDown's wrestlers, on how they have to get the victory over the Raw team, and the fact that despite being better when it comes to storylines and stuff, I honestly think that wrestling is still an important topic that needs to be improved for the wrestling brand. Seriously. This match, as much as I go on for nearly 24 minutes, this match officially crosses the line. No matter what you talk about or what you discuss, this match just instantly made me hate everything involving this whole brand supremacy thing. And at this point, I highly doubt it will ever return next year, because of the fact that there's gonna be more changes. It's gonna be reduced to an ordinary Survivor Series pay-per-view like it was in the past. And then once that happens, SmackDown is officially nothing in the second brand split. Seriously. I don't care if there was no build whatsoever in the show. Because if there was no build, then there's no reason to either have this brand supremacy exist, but at the same time, no reason to have SmackDown lose again. It's starting to become really annoying and frustrating. I know people are not going to like what I'm going to say this, but it caused me to cause harm to myself by punching my eye. Seriously, I'm not making this up. I don't care if this is fake. This is really, really, really starting to get to me, and they're doing this entirely on purpose just to trigger the SmackDown supporters. If they're doing this intentionally, then they should be aware on the fact that the booking decisions is what's causing AEW to become better than Raw. Seriously. When I completely say that AEW is better than Raw and not NXT, that really goes to show that the main shows should have some kind of change and having some improvements. Because at this point, the whole PG era is overstaying its welcome, and it's really causing the SmackDown brand to get worse and worse, because you wouldn't see any of this kind of stuff in the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression Era. Not even close. And matches afterwards, it wouldn't even matter on the fact that SmackDown instantly lost and Roman Reigns gained the victory over Drew McIntyre. It's way too late for that because Bianca Belair lost, and I'm really getting sick of people just completely moving on like it never ended up happening, but other than good matches. It's really, really childish, and it just makes Survivor Series really meaningless. The reason why there's no build is because of the pandemic and the fact that this is the 5th time that they did this. And for the 5th time, I actually expect SmackDown to actually win. But since that they didn't, they're instantly doing this on purpose while not caring about SmackDown whatsoever. And it's getting old at this point. Sorry for being extremely emotional, and I know you didn't expect me to make a video like this, but this is extremely personal, and the fact that this show instantly triggers me with the finish of the women's match. I honestly think that for what we see on Raw and SmackDown, they're really making the brand supremacy really one of the worst brand supremacies I've seen, compared to what they did in 2005, because they actually made SmackDown and Raw better teams, and whether they have SmackDown a better team compared to Raw, they instantly give Raw the advantage, and at this point, it's starting to become really annoying. It's not even funny or unique anymore. It's starting to become really miserable, and it's just spitting in the face on the SmackDown brand. And if people are going to say that SmackDown is buried and the word buried is overused, then you honestly not taking this pay-per-view seriously on the fact that this is the second pay-per-view when it comes to WWE standards. Seriously. Survivor Series is just like WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and the Royal Rumble. And the fact that it's being treated on the SmackDown's defeat, nothing, really goes to show that you're really not giving the SmackDown team any respect. And the fact that WWE is just forcing you to not giving any respect to the SmackDown team because of the decisions. I could go on and on about this, about the fact that they didn't have Big E on the team, and just forcing Raw to become victorious no matter what. But at this point, they really cross the line over this brand supremacy. And if there's no brand supremacy next year, then I'm convinced that SmackDown is starting to become Raw light compared to Raw. And people have been saying that since the brand split came to an end. And then since that the brand split is still going on, and the fact that SmackDown lost again, I honestly think that the matches that SmackDown does really means nothing on the performance in Survivor Series. It really doesn't. And I am really fed up when people just instantly shrug it off. I completely agree with you on the matches that they did in the past, like I mentioned before, but with this, I don't care if there was nothing on the line, because when you have a tagline of the best, and that also talks about the SmackDown and Raw superstars, it really goes to show that they barely don't talk about the fact that SmackDown barely had 80 good eliminations in the men's match and a terrible finish at the women's match. Seriously. This match doesn't give me any positive critique from the main event, especially Undertaker's farewell, if this show is about the present and not the past. As much as I'm mostly happy that the Undertaker is finally retired, it's way too late for that, since that they keep doing this retirement for so many times. And then doing the retirement at Survivor Series even after 30 years, it's not even worth it. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing I can actually think when it comes to The Undertaker was returning is having him being in the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and that's it. That's really it. That's what I think about the final farewell of The Undertaker. But I highly doubt that that's ever going to happen because of the pandemic. I know some of you guys didn't take the time to watch this entire video, but I honestly don't care. I mean, in the other videos that I make, when it comes to my schedules, I can understand, but for this video, I'm being serious. And at this point, if you don't care about SmackDown not getting a massive victory against Raw, then you're clearly not caring about brand supremacy and just not respecting the losses that SmackDown are getting in these shows, and the fact that you're not taking it as seriously as I am. I'm done. I really got nothing. SmackDown is officially getting beaten to the ground, and people are overlooking it. And at this point, if people are going to comment down on the fact that they didn't because of other shows and just overshadowing Survivor Series, then you're officially all overlooking SmackDown's defeat in Survivor Series.